I'm EZRAH, here to walk you through today's burning issues and the biggest story. This is Manila Times. The price of rice is expected to go up once again in the coming weeks as buffer stocks begin to run out. The government has rice assistance, one-time rice assistance to all employees of national government agencies to possibly cushion the impact of the impending rice price increase. Here to share his insight is Federation of Free Farmers, a board chairman, Mr. Leonardo Montemayor. Welcome to Manila Times.
Thank you very much, Ezra, and good day to you and to all the subscribers and followers of the Manila Times.
With the impending increase in the price of rice, what are the driving forces behind the increase of this staple food?
Actually, Ezra, the price of rice since the year started has already increased. I believe by about 2 pesos per kilo at retail. But I think that on top of that, per the recent pronouncements of the Department of Agriculture through one of their spokespersons, they are projecting an increase by up to 5 or even 6 pesos per kilo of rice at retail. The reasons given by the DA, and I think they are correct also, but I could possibly add some more. Number one, the imported rice has become more expensive. We import the bulk, about close to 90% of our rice requirements from Vietnam. And compared to the same period last year, rice is more expensive now from Vietnam by over 10%. So certainly, and therefore, that will translate at a lower, in our estimate, that increase in the price of rice from Vietnam will translate into about 3 pesos increase in the retail price of rice, selling imported rice. Now, in addition to the fact that imported rice is more expensive now, and by the way, the quantity of imported rice so far is far below the level of imported rice in the same period of last year. In other words, the first 3 months of 2023, I think the quantity imported is, if I remember correctly, about 25% or more lower than the same volume imported last year. So you see now a situation where imported rice is more expensive and the amount of rice imported so far has been quite low relative to last year's importation. Now, in addition to that, as insofar as local palay and rice production are concerned, the price of palay today, in fact, over the past few months until today, it has been high. It's about 22 to 24 pesos per kilo of palay. Okay, compare that to last year. If you are able to sell your rice at 19 pesos per kilo, the farmer would consider himself lucky to be able to sell his rice at 19 pesos per kilo to NFA. Today, it's 22 to 24. So naturally, when the trader buys the palay at that higher level, the general rule of thumb is the corresponding price of rice milled palay milled into rice would be roughly on a ×2, very roughly ×2. So if you're buying palay at 22 pesos, the retail price of that local rice would now be 44.
What do you think, aside from the milling of the rice and higher prices, importation prices from other sources outside the country? What do you think is the reason behind the increase of these prices?
The 20 pesos or 25 pesos per kilo rice that has been mentioned by our president, I don't think that that will happen this year or even in the coming next year or even beyond. Simply because well, if the president is banking on the private sector to be selling rice at 20 when they bought palay at 20, so they will be losing money for every kilo of rice that they will sell, it's all losses. So I don't think the private sector will be willing to uh, to lose money, just to fulfill that aspiration. Okay, but the Kadiwa stores, they get their rice stocks from the National Food Authority. Now, question: does the NFA have enough stocks to sell? Much less sell it at 20 to 25. I don't think so, because right now the national stock situation of NFA is very perilously low. Probably I would not be surprised if right now they're at the from 1 to 3 days supply.
So like you said, sir, we're 3 days away. We're very
Yes.
close. We're very close, too close from the country, from keeping the country to
Yeah,
go.
and ideally, Ezra, the policy has been, at least during my time, NFA has to keep a buffer stock of at least 30 days.
At least 30
Now
days.
it's only 3 days or probably less, di ba? So the private sector knows that, and that again contributes to the they're jacking up the price of palay so that they can get as many palay output from the farmers, and then they sell it at a higher price in rice form.
Like you said, sir, we're very close. We're 3 days away from no rice stocks at all. So
In the NFA,
the
yes.
government with the NFA. So do you think the
Yes.
government should be importing or should they be buying the local palay?
That's a very good question, Ezra, because number one, under the rice tarification law, and government can no longer import. It's no longer allowed to import. NFA lost all its trading functions, including the power to approve rice importations by the private sector. The rice market, the rice sector is now fully liberalized and privatized. So in short, those who were pushing for the RTL at the time said, "Oh, don't worry about supplies and pricing of rice. The market will take care of that." So okay, let the market take care of that. So what? NFA cannot import. So where will the government? How can the government now intervene? Is the government willing to increase its buying price of palay from 19 to 22 to match the traders? But then if they lose a lot of money in doing so. Now, some will say, oh, why not the PITC, the Philippine International Trading Corporation, which is under the Department of Trade and Industry, because the mandate, I believe, of the PITC allows it to import essential things like, pharmaceuticals, etc. Now, the question is, legally, can PITC still import rice, given the policy under the rice tarification law that government is out of the rice importation and trading business? Now, if somehow they find a legal basis to allow PITC to import, number one, does PITC have the managerial capacity to import? They don't have people. They don't have the bodegas and all that to do the importation. It's NFA that has that capacity. But NFA has been gone, eliminated by the law from doing any importation. So if PITC will now contract the NFA to do the importation, wow, it's a windfall for PITC. They get a hefty commission doing nothing, but then just allow NFA to import. But under NFA's mandate, they cannot import.
So are you for RCEP or not? And how will the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership or RCEP affect local farmers and local production?
Yeah, we were against the immediate or premature entry to RCEP, mainly because we felt that we are agriculture in particular is not ready for this stronger competition that will come about when we join RCEP. But the reality now is that the Senate has ratified RCEP last February 21, so we are in there. So our next step among us groups that we were in opposition is that, okay, it's a reality now, but we will continue to engage with the government, both the Senate and the executive branch, which they promise all sorts of support for the agri sector to help us be competitive in an RCEP membership situation. So we will hold them to account through a watchdog type of function. At the same time, we will be launching also a campaign to buy Filipino.
Sir, is there a crisis in rice right now?
There's a crisis. I would say it's a brewing crisis because the prices have already increased by about 2 pesos per kilo. As a result, among others, also of the depreciation of the peso. So remember, before the depreciation, for every kilo of rice, you pay only so much. But since you import in dollars and you have to spend more pesos for each dollar, so that already has an effect in terms of increasing the price of rice, plus the other factors we discussed earlier. So there is that. And there is also, as I mentioned, the problem of NFA having a very low level of inventory. And that will be a big problem, especially when we hit the months of July, August, September, when the main paray crop will still be at the growing stage, and therefore no local harvests will be available during those 3 critical months. And El Nino is supposed to hit us also around those months. So our local productions situation will be quite problematic, I think, especially if the private sector will still be reluctant to import because of the increased price of imported rice.
So, sir, in your opinion, what can the government do to improve food
Oh,
security here in the Philippines? Because you mentioned earlier about the miller. So, obviously, the fertilizer subsidies are not working. These one-time handouts are not working. So, you think the government should invest in more long-term projects, like, for example, the milling, as you mentioned earlier, as you said, it adds on such a huge amount on the price of rice. So what can the government do? I mean, should they invest in long-term projects?
actually, between now and because our main harvest will be around late October, November. We have an ongoing what we call dry season harvest up to about May and June. So if we can maximize the harvest during these months of May and June, or at least minimize losses, for example, in post-harvest losses like proper drying of palay, that can improve, I suppose, the supply situation from domestic sources. So deployment perhaps of more solar dryers, if that's possible in this very short period, and
Solar
mechanical
dryers
dryers from the NFA,
in the
yes.
wet season. Mhm.
Yeah, so that to reduce the losses, because I think we waste easily 10% of all our rice harvests because of waste spoilage. Pasa kasi pag harvested, tapos kung wala kang dryer, mabubulok lang yan. Hindi yan tatanggapin ng miller kasi mahirap gilingin yan. And then and therefore it fetches very low prices also for the farmers. Now, moving to the main crop, siguro, well, all the irrigation systems have to be repaired immediately, both for the big dams and the smaller impounding systems. If we can deploy more solar-powered irrigation pumps, kasi mabilis naman ma-distribute madaling ma-install yon, we can augment our production for the main crop. So those are very short-term measures, but I don't know how much we will be able to achieve in this very short period. And well, the fertilizer, the subsidized fertilizer and fuel coupons are still there, but I think the budget is not enough. So to encourage more farmers and even fisher folk, for example, to engage in their productive activities. So again, if something can be done to fast track and to increase the subsidies in these areas, it will help. But it will still be a very problematic situation given the looming El Nino situation.
Thank you so much for your insights, Federation of Free Farmers Board Chairman Leonardo Montemayor. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you also.